Hi, John.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Well, all things considered, I guess I'm doing okay. So let me introduce myself for uh, the people for whom this video is intended. My name is John Horgan. I'm a science journalist, and for 15 years, I've also been a teacher at Stevens Institute of Technology, an engineering school in Hoboken, New Jersey. And I have been recording these videos with some of my colleagues at Stevens uh, to try to let people know who we are, and especially students who are thinking of coming to Stevens. And so I am especially talking to colleagues who are in the humanities and social sciences. So history, um, anthropology, philosophy, and in your case, political science. So, Lindsey, just give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are.
Great. So I am Lindsey Cormack, and I am lucky to be at the same College of Arts and Letters as you, John, at Stevens Institute of Technology. I've been here now for 6 years, and what I do is teach our political science courses, and we have a remarkably broad offering of courses. So I've been able to teach classes like this coming semester. I'll teach Intro to American Politics. And I love teaching that class, but I especially love it during an election year. But we have classes, focused on the election. We have classes on the courts. We have Congress-focused classes. We have a health policy class that actually got put on the books last year. And, it now seems more relevant to kind of talk about how decisions are made around health, but in a political conditions. And so at Stevens, I do that. And the one tying piece to stuff that I do is I run something called our Diplomacy Lab, which is a program that's in conjunction with the U.S. State Department, where state gives us assignment. They usually give us one a year, where students will look at a topical, world-relevant issue for the semester, and then they will report to state what their findings are. And in the class, we'll have back and forth, usually over Zoom or over BlueJeans or some other sort of medium, where we'll talk to our state officials and they'll kind of give updates to the class, and the class will give them updates as well.
So I'm curious, how did you get interested in political science in the first place? Why did you decide to make a career out of that?
Oh, well, that's like two really interesting but different questions. When I was in college, I didn't really know that college for some people is like you do something that you love and then you continue with that. The question I asked myself in college is what do I not know a lot about? I guess that's what I'll study here. And because I had the opportunity to do it and the choice. And so what I did at the University of Kansas was political science and African American studies, because I had thought up until that time in my education, those were like big holes. And so the reason I got into it was because I didn't know a lot about it. But then after doing undergrad and graduate school in political science, I had the opportunity to work with politicians who are practicing politicians. So Governor Patterson of New York. And while I enjoyed the stuff that I did with him, what I was able to see is that there's a lot about politics that is not totally suited to my personality type, or not something that I'd want to do. Like making a career out of politics sounds really hard, underpaid, and something that I didn't see at that time in my life as something that it didn't call to me the way teaching called to me.
So we're living in this time where there is a lot going on in politics. I mean, I've been around, I'm a lot older than you are, and I can't remember a time when politics was more polarized and heated, except maybe going back to the 1960s when I was a teenager. To what degree do current events affect what you do in the classroom?
I really like that question. It's really hard to divorce the discussion of politics from current events. So that permeates and infiltrates every class that I teach. And sometimes you have to dial it back and say okay, we've talked about Twitter long enough. Now we're going to go on to how this sort of system works. But it's something that I think is important. And I actually feel really privileged to have a topic that is so prevalent or top of mind for a lot of people because it doesn't take much to have an opinion on it. You know, there's many classes that I could walk in at Stevens on like thermodynamics where I wouldn't have an entry point because I wouldn't know like where to even start. Politics isn't that way. We all live in politics. Everything we do is political. And so I like empathize with the feeling of like right now feels crazy, but I feel like it's always crazy. And it just depends on like your perspective and your experience and where you're coming from. And that's actually really neat to be able to teach on that topic because people are living it and doing it. And so they can always just come and have something to say. Right now is a little bit different, of course, in ways. But that's not really a detriment. That's actually great to have that come into the classroom.
Do you sometimes have to restrain yourself when it comes to voicing your own political opinions in class? Is that something that you try to avoid?
So that I like thinking about that a lot because I'm not sure what it's like in other disciplines, but I know that part of being an authority or a legitimate instructor on something means that you have to be willing to hear it from all angles and teach it from all angles. So for me, when I started at Stevens, I wasn't quite aware of like the political milieu of the students. I just didn't know. And I just kind of treaded in this like as neutral as I could plane, and I didn't really understand, you know, how they were receiving it. And one of the best comments I ever got on one of my first teaching reviews was, I don't know if she's a Democrat or a Republican. She said this thing, which made me think she's a Republican, but then she said this thing, which made me think she's a Democrat. And then that student ended up emailing me to say, like, I know you don't have to tell me, but can you tell me? Because I was back and forth and couldn't figure it out. And so I do try to keep it in a way that, you know, I'm not, hello, here's who I am. However, if a student ever point blank asks me, I'll tell them. I'll say, here's how I'm registered. Here's why I'm registered. And it's not a secret. And I would expect the same of them if they wanted to have that sort of conversation, because I don't think it should be a secret. I think politics is something that is a part of who we are. And having an opinion doesn't mean you can't have an appreciation that there's different opinions or approaches to a project or a topic. And so it's something where like like the teaching is of course undoubtedly influenced by it, but it's not something where we're only going to hear this way and this is the right way to think about this issue. That's not my style, and I doubt that that's very many political science professor styles either.
So we're at a tech school. A lot of our students are going to go into computer science, electrical engineering, technical disciplines. To what degree has technology changed your field? Big data, computers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in enormous ways in the way that it's affecting everything. I mean, campaigns that used to run, you know, on like volunteer know-how, or this is how the other person used to do it, are constantly being updated by, you know, we've done a lot of data gathering on this, and this seems to be more helpful, or this seems to be something that works or doesn't. There is a nonprofit that I work with called Outreach Circle. And what I've done for them is like assess their different methods for getting people to vote. So voter turnout or voter registration. And that's something where academics really now have this value add for practitioners that usually rely on networks of like, here's how it worked in the past, let's keep doing it. But there's now like a lot of opportunities for people who have computer science backgrounds or, you know, minds to think about engineering in ways that people who, you know, think just about politics can't do. So there's a lot of intersections. And those fields are really kind of like feeding into each other and changing each other in good ways.
So I am only in certain cases asking people personal questions on in these videos. I can't resist in your case because there's this thing that you do that I find so extraordinary. So it's weightlifting. I hope you don't mind my bringing this up. So just, can you tell us a little bit about, just to let people know, you are a really serious competitive weightlifter. So how did that happen? And yeah, just what's up with
John,
that?
that is such a funny question. So I'm going to tilt you a little bit. This is my office. That's my weightlifting bar right there.
That's great.
That's my pull-up bar right there. This is all in my office. It usually is out of view of my students.
Uh-huh.
I just bought a squat rack and a bench press for the basement because I feel like gyms aren't coming back for a long time now. That's something that I got into after I had my daughter. I had a baby 8 years ago, and I started to think about what can I do to make it so that I'm like here and healthy and active. And after doing the research, like I would have done for anything else, it was like there's a few basic things: be stronger. And since I've started that, I've since been in 2 car accidents, and they could have been awful, but each time they were not as bad as they would have been had I been weaker. And so, like, for me, it's something I think I'll never give up. And I think even in your field, you're probably seeing a lot of the stuff that's saying, um, you know, progressive resistance strength training is also helpful for brain health. And so it like has these sort of things that it flows over into that, like, I see no reason to stop or slow down on that. So that's something that I love and I will continue to do. It sometimes surprises my students, but I actually find that at Stevens, we have a lot of people who are kind of like into that as well.
Huh. Well, you're an inspiration to me, and I'm sure you are an inspiration. I know you are an inspiration to many of your students. So I hope I get to see you on campus in reality instead of just virtually sometime soon.
I hope we do too. I really hope I get to be back with people, but how lucky are we to have like this video ability to see each other? Thank you so much for talking with me today.
My pleasure, Lindsey.